God rescues Lot, chapter 19. Genesis, Genesis chapter
Genesis.
19. Genesis chapter 19 is where we're at. Okay. Do we want to jump straight into it? Do you have anything to say about the last one? I don't think I do because we just finished recording.
Well, last episode, at the very end of it, the chapter in 18, God mentions to Abraham that he's going to destroy Sodom and Gomorrah because of the outcry of all the victims that are crying out to God for help, or at least crying out because they've been murdered, probably cannibalized, crying out from
the
the ground,
the
just like
the
Abel.
cannibalism you mentioned last episode as well. Is there a reference in some other books that you're bringing that up, or you're just assuming cannibalism,
It's
or does it come up?
so well, part of the practice. So first of all, when people
Part
think of
of practice we
sacrifice
eat each
in
other.
yeah, when people think of sacrifice in an ancient religion, they think just killing something. The killing is only necessary in order to eat the thing that's being sacrificed, because you're actually creating a meal that you're giving to the god, and
Mm-hmm.
so you're offering that as food, and usually it's a shared meal. And so if you're doing
That's
a
why it's a
human
lamb.
sacrifice,
Mm-hmm.
it involves cannibalism. And we know this because of archaeological studies and understandings of ancient culture. And even in Mesoamerica, not even 1,000 years ago, or
The Aztec history.
the Inca, right, the Mayans and the Aztecs were explicitly killing and cannibalizing children by the thousands every year, local neighbors. In fact, part of the reason why the Spaniards were able to conquer them was because the neighboring towns were so upset because all their people were getting kidnapped and eaten, that they joined the Spaniards to go attack. So
Yeah.
yeah, this was something that was happening. It's not explicit in this story, um, but what is explicit at the very least is that Sodom and Gomorrah has lots of victims, and they were crying out to God, and so God came to deal justice to the city.
It's interesting. It reminded me I should look into it one day. My very first serious book I ever read, after learning how to read, I was 5 or 6 years old. I picked up the Aztec. It was called The Daughter of Montezuma, which was an Aztec king. And it was
Mm,
all about like human sacrifice and the gore and the. My mom
wow.
was like, "You're not reading that," and I would still just take the book and read it.
It is very brutal. Um,
Yeah.
it's not like it's not like that they would do a painless killing before they offered the person to their god. Oftentimes it was torture first.
Yeah.
Well, I think one of the Aztec gods
And
was said
even in
to
their daughters or like even though it's like let's say the king's daughter, but when the time came, like they just did not think twice to offer her up.
yeah. hmm Well, as we'll see in this chapter, your daughters are not nearly as valuable to
No.
people of the ancient world as your sons are. We're going to see that in a very explicit way in this chapter.
Sadly, might
But
be
I think,
still
one of
true.
the ancient Aztec gods, apparently, the more that the children cried, they would collect the tears, because that would help ensure a better rain for the coming month, season. And so they would make sure that the children that, sorry for everyone listening, but it's what actually happened, you know, and make sure that they cried as much as they could. It's just crazy.
The collecting the tears reminded me about another thing. Again, in Armenian, we have this thing where if someone is crying, you just kind of mock them a little bit as kids. That's not. I'm not saying it's a cultural thing with
Right.
you, but as kids, we would mock them and just go like as if somebody gives a shit, you know. And then it's
hmm
very interesting to think about that. It's just like,
It's like the version of the world's smallest violin, which is more the American way of saying the same thing.
yeah, interesting.
Or oh, crybaby. Yeah.
Yeah, like who cares about your tills? You can collect it and toss it away. Nobody cares.
Well, back then they didn't care at all. So sadly.
I feel like we still don't. I don't think we've evolved much. I think we pretend to be. I think I just said this in my other channel. We pretend to wear a mask because we've decided to be civilized, but it's just a decision, not an evolution. So we just like put on the mask and pretend to be like we're civilized, but we act like the
Hmm.
exact same monsters as before.
Right. It's amazing what people will become if given total freedom to do whatever they want. And you see this with the anonymity on the internet, how people
Oh
behave
yeah.
differently when there are no consequences to what they say. When you have
Oh my
complete
god.
anonymity, you can get say whatever you want, and people's actual nature start to really come out. And I think if we knew what was in a lot of our neighbors' hearts, we would be pretty frightened, and we'd be pretty thankful that we live in a society that tampers those urges, at least creates so much social negative repercussions from bad behavior that people generally don't act out on it. I mean, although there's still murders and rapes and all the time, but
Yeah, no, actually, that is such a true comment. I remember when social media first came about, when it was just so new to me, I guess, like when I first signed up for it, and all of a sudden realized how I had friends that I had great respect for, and then all of a sudden is like their entire page. You know, you can scan through a page and kind of get a complete psychiatric evaluation of the person pretty decently, and in fact far better than when you're in front of them, because in front of you they again like they act a little different, they conceal a lot of stuff, whereas behind the screen they somehow, especially back then, now they've gotten a little smarter to want to portray an image, you know, but back then it was just so raw and just new that I had friends that I was just like, I immediately distanced myself from, because I was like, whoa, what is going on with this person internally, right?
mm,
Because it just threw me off so much to see such a extreme, different human person, just personality displayed, that you know, in a if that's how she behaved in the real world, I would have never been her friend, right? Like it's just
right.
very interesting. But anyway,
Well, I mean, and it also calls back to our discussion in the last episode about people living in the city versus people living in a more rural environment. When it's a smaller town environment, there's a lot more consequences to misbehavior. When you're in a big city, oftentimes you have a bit of anonymity, right? You're
this is
surrounded by
true.
millions of people. You know, if you punch someone in the face in New York, chances are they're never going to see you again if you run away fast enough. You know,
Yeah,
as long as you both aren't go down the same sidewalk at the same time every day. You know,
yeah,
it's easier to have that anonymity. So there's more opportunity for your lower nature to come
take
out.
over. Yeah, no, that's definitely very true. Very true. All right. God rescues Lot, chapter 19.
So the two angels came to Sodom in the evening, and Lot was sitting at the gate of Sodom. I want to interject here real quick. So the gates of a city is kind of like the town square at this time, and so that is where kind of the elders or the people kind of in charge of the city would hang out, would help make decisions for the city, or um, take testimony about something,
They're
or
the
be a witness to a
Watchers.
contract. You're right. Yeah. But the gates is where the people who are kind of overseeing the city, they hang out during the day. And Lot is hanging out there, which doesn't say a lot of good things about Lot right now, because he's not supposed to be um, living with the unrighteous. But, he is. So
Well, I
continue.
mean, who decided that, right? All we know is he just chose that direction and went there. We don't know about his righteousness or unrighteousness. We know Abraham and his wife are not that great of people, so we can assume,
Oh, and Lot's not that great either.
yeah.
At least Abraham's going to eventually have a character arc um, later in the in the book. But yeah, Lot has his own issues as well, and part of the issue is that God says you told them that they needed to live as wanderers, and Lot was like, I'd rather go live by the city. So, and he's
Yeah,
not just living by the city; he's basically he's
in the
part of the
city.
city now. Yeah.
Okay.
So when Lot saw them, the two angels, he rose to meet them and bowed himself with his face to the earth and said, "My lords," as in sirs, Please turn aside your servant's house and spend the night and wash your feet. Then you may rise up early and go on your way. So Lot's behaving like Abraham. He's being very hospitable to these strangers. He doesn't know who they are. He just knows that they're new people to the city.
Mm-hmm.
They said, "No, we will spend the night in the town square." But he pressed them strongly, so they turned aside to him and entered his house. Lot did not want them hanging out in the town square. We'll see why. And he made them a feast and baked unleavened bread, and they ate. So he's doing well so far. But before they lay down, the men of the city, the men of Sodom, both young and old, all the people to the last man surrounded the house. So the whole city saw these new people show up.
Mm-hmm.
And they called to Lot, "Where are the men who came to you tonight? Bring them out to us that we may know them." Okay. That is a euphemism.
Yeah.
To know someone is a euphemism for sex. What
Mm-hmm.
they're actually saying here is, "Bring them out to us that we may rape them," is what's being said here.
Mm-hmm.
And Lot went out to the men at the entrance, shut the door after him, and said, "I beg you, my brothers, do not act so wickedly. Behold," this is where Lot kind of goes the wrong way, "I have 2 daughters who have not known any man. Let me bring them out to you, and you can do with them as you please. Just do nothing to these men, for they have come under the shelter of my roof."
Jesus Christ.
But they said, "Stand back." And they said, "This fellow came to sojourn, and he has become the judge. Now we will deal worse with you than with them." And they pressed hard against the man Lot and drew near to break down the door. But the men reached out their hands and brought Lot into the house with them and shut the door. And they struck with blindness the men who were at the entrance of the house, both small and great, so that they wore themselves out groping for the door. So bring some clarity here. The angels pulled Lot in, and then the angels struck all of the wannabe rapists blind.
Mm-hmm.
So both old and young, I mean, you're talking like young teenagers probably too. And then notice, not only are they struck with blindness, they don't like go home and give up. They wore themselves out, still trying to find the door
It's like
to break into the
zombies.
house because they wanted to. Yeah, they're so wicked. They wanted to rape these strangers so badly that even though they were blind, they kept striving to try to get into the house.
Yeah. Zombie apocalypse.
Pretty much. Then the men said to Lot, "Have you anyone else here, sons-in-law, sons, daughters, or anyone you have in the city? Bring them out of this place. For we are about to destroy this place because the outcry against its people has become great before the Lord, and the Lord has sent us to destroy it." So Lot went out and said to his sons-in-law, who were to marry his daughters, the ones he almost gave up, he said, "Up, get out of this place, for the Lord is about to destroy the city." But he seemed to his sons-in-laws to be jesting. They didn't believe him. As
Why?
the
So
morning,
why? Okay. Why are his sons-in-laws or any of? So he's basically just telling them to leave just because he has the information, right? Because we don't know. They could be as wicked.
well, so yeah, and that's an interesting thing here. So his sons-in-laws clearly are other men of the city of Sodom,
Mm-hmm.
right? So it's not like Lot was going to marry his daughters off to righteous men. He was going to let them get married off to, people of a city of Sodom, which is clearly a very evil, wicked place. So he's
Mm-hmm.
not doing very good right here at all. And then they didn't believe him. They're like, "Oh, it sounds like he's joking. God's going to destroy the whole town. All right, whatever. Old man, weirdo." So as morning dawned, the angels urged Lot, saying, "Up, take your wife and your 2 daughters who are here, lest you be swept away in the punishment of the city." But he lingered. So the men seized him and his wife and his 2 daughters by the hand, and the Lord being merciful to him, and they brought him out and set him outside the city. And as they brought them out, one said, "Escape for your life. Do not look back or stop anywhere in the valley. Escape to the hills, lest you be swept away." And Lot said to them, "Oh no, my lords, behold, your servant has found favor in your sight, and you have shown me great kindness in saving my life, but I cannot escape to the hills, lest the disaster overtake me and I die. Behold, the city is near enough to flee to, and it is a little one. Let me escape there. Is it not a little one? And my life will be saved." So Lot's like, "I don't want to have to run up into the hills. There's a small town around the corner. Let me go there instead."
Too much work.
And he said to, yeah, he's like, he doesn't want to
Too much effort.
Lot's he's being so obstinate here. He doesn't want to be a wanderer. He wants to live in a town,
Mm-hmm.
And so he said to him, "Behold, I grant you this favor, that I will not overthrow the city of which you've spoken. Escape there quickly, for I can do nothing till you arrive there." Therefore, the name of the city was called Zoar. We'll stop right there. There's a lot to cover.
All right. So towards the end, I maybe lost some of it. Hold on. So basically, ours by the hand. So, but he lingered. So the men seized him and his wife and his two daughters. They're talking about Lot's wife and two daughters by the
Yes, yeah.
hand.
So the
Alone
angels
being
grabbed him
rescued.
and pulled him out of the city because he kept lingering.
They brought him to set him outside the city. And as they brought him, escape for your life. You look okay. So the part that's not extremely clear to me is why is actually Lot being rescued, because there's zero evidence of him being a righteous person. In fact, it seems like a flawed person. Granted, women's life didn't mean much, but to just randomly offer your daughters instead of these people that you don't even know, it's a little again,
It
it's not
sounds very,
unusual,
very,
but it's
very weird to us. Yeah, it's definitely not a good thing to do. Where Lot went, what he did correct is he didn't try to rape these guys once they showed up in his town.
so the
Right?
the
It,
basically the moral standard is so low. Like the what is it? The expectations are to meet the requirement to not be wicked is so freaking low. Just don't rape, dude.
just
Don't
don't rape.
rape.
Don't rape. Don't eat people. Like come on, y'all.
All I'm
Right?
asking you, do not rape, and you just can't follow that one little.
Yeah. Unfortunately, a lot of men still don't understand that.
But he's
So
offering
yeah, I
his
mean,
daughters to be raped. That's just fantastic.
yeah. So what Lot did right is well, first he didn't rape them, but he also he welcomed them and he fed them and he gave them a safe place to stay. In fact, he saved them because they said that they wanted to go sleep in the town square, and Lot said, "No, no, 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 come into my house instead,"
Because he
because he
knows how
knew
bad it
if they were
gets.
to, exactly he knew if they went to sleep in the town square at night, they weren't gonna wake up happy. So that
Or too happy.
that
I'm kidding.
act itself was enough for God to say, "Okay, you are righteous enough. You're more righteous than this whole city, right? I will save you." Now, of course, he tries to offer up his daughters, which is horrible. At that back then, as we all know, women weren't seen as valuable as men. However, to be a little bit fair here, he didn't have any sons of his own, so his daughters were the only means of like him passing on his genetics. Like, and so him. It sounds horrible to say. Him being willing to give up his own offspring to save a stranger. Um, some say that the story is kind of saying that is trying to show how much he's willing to sacrifice of his own family in order to save a stranger, and that's in a is an act of righteousness. Although that's kind of just silver lining on the edge of something that really he shouldn't have done. He shouldn't have offered his daughters up. He should have just told them
Could
to run away.
could also in a bizarre way be like they were gonna be property of those wicked people anyway.
Well, yeah, I mean, he was marrying them off to out. We'll give him the benefit of the doubt that he found the two least rapey guys in the town to marry his daughters. We don't know much about his sons-in-law other than they just they didn't believe him, so they decided to stay in the town.
Yeah, which is also funny that he says sons of law, but they're not married yet, so that it's not son of law
Right.
yet. Like these are potential suitors.
Yeah, they're betrothed to his daughters. Is would be a more accurate way of putting it.
Isn't betrothed means like you have consummated because in the Talmud at least betrothed means consummated, like it's betrothed through intercourse.
The marriage begins at the consummation. Betrothment is just the promise. Like it's like a engagement. Like you're engaged, right?
I guess
So
unless
you're
it's
engaged, but you haven't
specified
yet
that it's
gotten
through
married yet.
intercourse. Okay.
Yeah. So it's the same thing with Mary and Joseph in the New Testament. Um,
Okay.
betrothed but not married. Yeah.
Oh, I see.
Um,
Yeah, I guess in the I guess unless it's mentioned, because in the Talmud it is particularly says betrothed by intercourse.
it might be a translation issue there.
Well, it also could be complete. Talmud is not related necessarily. Talmud just came
Sure.
way after, and it's a whole different beast. But
Right.
okay, do we continue, or do you have more to say on that?
Yeah.
My eye just fell
Mm.
on some of the text from the later. I had forgotten. It's been a long time since I've read Genesis. Oh, disgusting. Sorry. Anyone who never read it are like, what is she talking about? What's coming? Just wait.
Just wait. If it's not bad enough already.
Yeah, no.
Okay. Okay. We're back. So
God destroys
Lot,
Sodom.
yeah, Lot still is dilly dallying. Just ridiculous that he has to be forced out of the city. Uh, and then he's so lazy he still doesn't want to be a sojourner out in the hills. So he finds a small little town. He's like, "Hey God, can you just send me there instead?"
But he ends
And God's
up
like,
at
"All
the
right,
hills because
fine."
he realizes he gets afraid. He's a coward. But okay, go on.
Yeah, runs to a little town called Zoar because he doesn't want to live in the hills. So
That's when
God
it
destroys
changed.
Sodom. The sun had risen on the earth when Lot came to Zoar. Then the Lord rained on Sodom and Gomorrah sulfur and fire from the Lord out of heaven. Interesting phraseology. We'll come back to that. And he overthrew those cities and all the valley and all the inhabitants of the cities and what grew on the ground. But Lot's wife behind him looked back, and she became a pillar of salt. And Abraham went early in the morning to the place where he had stood before the Lord, and he looked down toward Sodom and Gomorrah and toward all the land of the valley, and he looked, and behold, the smoke of the land went up like a smoke of a furnace. So it was that when God destroyed the cities of the valley, God remembered Abraham and sent Lot out of the midst of the overthrow when he overthrew the cities in which Lot had lived. Man, that is a weird way to write a sentence.
So it was that
We'll
when
stop
God
right there
destroyed.
because we're going to have a shift in the story here. We'll stop right here just to recap that.
Yeah, God destroyed the city of the valley. God remembered Abraham and sent Lot out of the midst of the overthrow when he overthrew the city in which Lot had lived. So it all became about Abraham and Lot, obviously. But it's interesting. Let me think about the Lot's wife behind him. So she didn't make it. She became a pillar of salt. She turned into salt.
Right. Yeah. So in this region, this is right around where the Dead Sea is. There are pillars of salted rock and soil and salt that, like a stalagmite, that kind of stick out of the ground, and uh, from a distance, can look like a human, look like people that are frozen in salt. When it says that Lot's wife looked behind, she looked back. It's not saying she's just like, glanced over her shoulder. What it means is she wanted to go back to Sodom. Like she desired not to leave, so she turned to try to go back, and so she was destroyed.
So it reminded me of, let me put the screen so people can see it. It reminded me of other mythologies because I was like, wait, that just created a visual in my mind that I remember reading, but I don't remember details. So it actually, Lot's wife turning into a pillar of salt has striking parallels to several other myths and ancient culture traditions. So the motive of transformation into stone or mineral as a result of disobedience, looking back, or divine punishment appears in many traditions around the Mediterranean and beyond. So Greek myth, Orpheus and I cannot pronounce this, Eurydice story, Orpheus travels to the underworld to bring back his wife Eurydice. Somebody agrees. These are hard names to pronounce. On one condition, he must not look back at her until they both reach the surface. So something about looking back. You must not look. That's actually very interesting because she looks back and that's when she gets punished in a way. So you must not look back in this Greek mythology. At the last moment, Orpheus turns to look, and his wife vanishes forever. And then, of course, the parallel is looking back moment, leading to irreversible loss. Mirrors Lot's wife. Then there's Greek myth, Niobe turned to stone. Niobe, maybe? Niobe. A queen of Thebes mocks Leto, these are all terrible names, and boasts of her many children. In response, Apollo and Artemis kill them. Overcome with grief, Niobe flees to Mount Syphilis and is turned into stone while still whipping. Ancient
Some would
travelers
say
claimed.
an even worse punishment than being turned to a pillar of salt.
Yeah. Ancient travelers, if I have any Greek watchers, they'll be like, "You are butchering Naira. What's going on?" Ancient travel, I thought you were my friend. I do have a hard time with Greek names. I literally have a Greek friend that every single time I look at his name, I still don't know how to pronounce it. Ancient travelers claimed they could still see the whipping rock on the mountainside. So the parallels is punitive or grief-based transformation into stone, living behind a... okay, so the first one was very interesting. The Mesopotamian and Levantine legends, there are ancient local traditions around the Dead Sea region that predate or parallel the biblical narrative. Some accounts describe natural salt pillars along the western shore. That's what you were talking about, I believe. Mount Sodom, one of which is still called Lot's wife. Very interesting. These pillars likely inspired or reinforced the biblical story, functioning as a mythic etiology and story explaining a natural phenomenon. And then there's Roman myth, Pompeian frozen figures.
Yeah, the Pompeian
Frozen figures. Yeah, when Mount Vesuvius erupted in 79 CE, many bodies were covered in ash. Oh, I know about this, and preserved in petrified poses.
Yeah, so a real quick fun fact about that. The reason why you have so many of these Pompeian people think that's petrified people, petrified from the volcano. What actually happened was the entire city was covered with ash. And as it was being excavated, they discovered that there were cavities inside of the ash. And those cavities were where people had died. And so what they did is they started pouring concrete into those cavities, and then they would brush away the ash. And that's what forms all those figures all throughout Pompeii if you ever visit it.
I've heard about that, and last time I was not last time, maybe the time before. No, last time I was in Italy. Actually, there was a huge alert going on that Pompeii may erupt again.
Right.
So that was interesting. But I guess for them, they're like, yeah, that's all the time. It's like it was nothing to them.
And you can find some pictures of those salt pillars, to put on the screen.
Yeah.
For people to see. So, I mean, this is occurring around the Dead Sea, and there's actually there is some archaeological evidence that some natural catastrophe at least happened around this time. In fact, there's even theories that the Dead Sea was formed specifically from this natural catastrophe. So, for instance, a meteor coming down and hitting, destroying the cities that are there, creating a crater that became the Dead Sea, which is why it's so far below sea level, right?
Yeah.
It's very likely that could have been the case. There wasn't a Dead Sea before. There were some towns around that area.
I mean,
And
yeah.
then, a meteor is coming down, and God's like, hey, this whole place is going to get destroyed. We'll go save the righteous out of there. Which is just basically, a guy and his daughters who don't rape people. And
Well, we'll
pulls
see
them
about
out.
that because the daughter's rape just all right, but
Yeah, some family issues coming up. Last thing I want to say.
go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, for me, it becomes the Greek mythology, especially the first one, that was a very identical, almost match, and some of the others too. Is yet again, like I think I've talked about this quite a bit. Is just for those who think of this as like it's God's word, and it's this and that, it's just yet again, we need to keep in mind that these are the compilation of the myths and legends of that region by various different groups. So the Bible is more of a compilation that, as far as we know, by Jews, but all of these myths have been shared and understood, and a version of it have always been in Greek mythology, Mesopotamian, and so on and so forth. So it's just really not a phenomenon. The phenomena part of it is the fact that this is the version, despite Jews not having a state, this is the version that has, maybe that's why, I guess, right, because they became vagabond, and then hence this is the version that has reached the world, really. but
Yeah, I mean,
but they're not
there's an argument.
unique.
Yeah, there's an argument to be made, which is a traditional interpretation that these stories collected in the Bible are the original stories that eventually turned into the other stories you see in other cultures. If you're more of
Hold
a
on, what? Say that again. I think I'm saying the opposite, because these stories came before the Bible.
so these before the Bible was actually put onto parchment, it was an oral tradition, just like all the stories of the ancient world, right? And so no one can say for certain which story was the original story, because they existed for 1,000 years plus before they were ever written down. So it's always conjecture, just assumptions or presuppositions or conjecture about, well, maybe it came from this area first, or maybe it came from this area first.
Yeah, but we do
The
have
traditional
pretty good
understanding
okay, go ahead, sorry.
for Christians and Jews is that these stories are the original ones that eventually were passed around and turned into others, and then but these were better recorded and then eventually written down. You can
Oh,
believe
okay.
that if
So
you want
yeah,
to, and you don't
that
have
that
to.
I
Yeah.
definitely disagree with hardcore, because we know that the Bible was compiled around 700 to 500 BC, right exact time where Israel was, or Hebrews, Jews, I don't know what to say, but Israel basically got taken by Babylon, and then followed by 586 BC. Judah got taken by Assyria, and then all of that got taken by Persian Empire, Cyrus the Great, and all that. But during that, those are the couple hundred years that this got compiled, and it is based off of other stories that predate them, because we have archaeological records of those things. We do not have any actual archaeological records of Israel's existence as old as they claim. We like truly do not. But we do have a lot of archaeological records when it comes to predating these like Greek writings, and some of these other stories, the Mesopotamian, the Babylonian writings. Like there's actual artifacts that we can find to predate those. So I understand that the traditional version might be the similar gaslighting that I keep seeing in
Oh, no,
Bible,
no.
but
What I'm saying is that before anything's written down, there's an oral. The story's been passed. We don't know how long the story was passed orally. It could have been 100 years. It could have been. It could never have been passed down orally, and they just copied, which is the more critical atheistic way of saying, oh, the thing only existed as soon as it was written down in paper. That the oldest version we have,
well, yeah.
or the stories could have been passed down through 50 generations, 2,000 years orally before they were ever put into paper. So we don't, without a time machine, we don't know for certain where the stories actually originated. We can have some conjecture based upon, well, maybe it started here because we have an older written record, but that doesn't presuppose that an older oral tradition existed prior to that first written record, right? So
Yeah, but
we
we can
really don't
only go
know.
off of evidence at this point, because otherwise it's
Right.
just, what do you're never
It's
going to know.
Yeah, it's conjecture either way. So, you know, I, if you, which is why I said if you want to believe that this is the original story, that's the most ancient version that was passed orally before it was written. That has just as much legitimacy as saying, nah, this was probably just written down sometime after all the other stories. Without a
Yeah, no,
time
I guess
machine,
what
you
I'm
don't know for
saying is
certain.
we know that Epic of Gilgamesh predates Bible, that some of the Greek mythologies predate Bible, and that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, they were written down before the Bible was written down.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. All right, we're about to move on to some gnarly stuff. Last thing I wanted to really quick point out. I mentioned earlier the sentence on verse 24. Then the Lord rained down on Sodom and Gomorrah sulfur and fire from the Lord out of heaven, which is kind of
Mm-hmm.
strange. This is pointed out once again as seeing that relationship between the Father and the Son, the angel of the Lord and Yahweh, the seen and
Mm-hmm.
the unseen aspects of God, the transcendent and the immanent, um, where the Lord rained down the destruction from the Lord out of heaven. So you have the heavenly God and the earthly God being the same God in this sentence. It's not saying two different gods, but there's two different ways of understanding God, one in
Mm-hmm.
heaven and one here on earth. So this is pointed out as the Father and the Son relationship of the Trinity
Mm-hmm.
from a Christian perspective.
What's the properties of sulfur? Why
Stinks.
is that in the Bible? Huh?
Sulfur stinks.
Does it?
We know that. Yes, it
Sulfur
smells
plays a
like
very interesting role.
rotten
Mm-hmm.
eggs.
It does? Wait.
Literally, yeah.
Sulfur.
That's why rotten eggs smell that way.
Sulfur. Sulfur. So, physical and chemical properties of sulfur. Element symbol is S. Atomic number is 16. Color, bright yellow, solid, room temperature, blah, blah, blah. Rotten egg smell. Yeah, you're right. I didn't know that actually. Pure sulfur doesn't smell strongly, but when burnt, okay, that's fire. Okay, that's important
Hmm.
because so if it's not burning, it's perfectly fine. It doesn't smell that strong. But then when it's burnt or combined with other elements, hydrogen, for example, it gives off a characteristic of rotten egg, which is just about the worst smell you can. It will burn the hair
Yeah.
follicles of your nose. So that's interesting. Okay.
Not only are you getting destroyed, but you also stink.
You're just like, yeah,
Hmm.
you're both burning and smelling I mean, it's pretty bad. That's
Yeah.
about the worst death you can imagine. I'll give him that. Give him that. There's some good punishment there.
Hmm.
Okay, let's go into these rapers.
So, yeah, let me read this, then we'll talk about it. Lot and his daughters. My, how he has raised them. So, now Lot went up out of Zoar and lived in the hills with his two daughters, for he was afraid to live in Zoar. So he lived in a cave with his two daughters. And the firstborn said to the younger, our father is old, and there is not a man on earth to come into us after the manner of all the earth. Uh, she means that literally.
Yeah.
Come, let us make our father drink wine, and we will lie with him, that we may preserve offspring from our father. So they made their father drink wine that night, and the firstborn went in and lay with her father. He did not know when she lay down or when she arose. The next day, the firstborn said to the younger, behold, I lay last night with my father. Let us make him drink wine tonight also. Then you go in and lie with him, that we may preserve offspring from our father. So they made their father drink wine that night also, and the younger arose and lay with him, and he did not know when she lay down or when she arose. Thus both the daughters of Lot became pregnant by their father. The firstborn bore a son and called his name Moab. He is the father of the Moabites to this day. The younger also bore a son and called his name Ben Ami. He is the father of the Ammonites to this day.
Incest. Moab
Hmm.
and Ammonites. Moab and
The, Mo-
Ammonites.
the Moabites and the Ammonites.
Moabites.
Moab literally means from father, like of the father.
Mm-hmm.
Ab as in Abba, right? And then
Mm-hmm.
Ben Ami means son of my people or something like that.
Ben Ami. Some of these names are ringing such insane bells in my brain that I'm not recalling why. Ah, interesting. So Moab currently, because I was like, I was thinking of them as regions and locations, but I shied away from saying that. So Moab is east of Dead Sea, modern day Western Jordan, known for fertile plateau region, capital Dibon, mentioned in Egyptian, Assyrian, and Mesopotamian inscriptions. Okay, that's why. Okay, famous Moabite king, Mesha, 9th century BC, known from the Mesha stele, an important archaeological artifact that corroborates biblical account from Moab point of view. And then Ammon, northeast of Moab, roughly around modern Amman, Jordan again. So it's just right around still that area. And Rabbah of the Ammonites, capital Rabbah, known for fortified city, trade routes, military strength. Mentioned in Assyrian records, sometimes allied or in conflict with Israel. By the Iron Age and Persian periods, the Moabites and Ammonites gradually lost their distinct tribal identities and eventually absorbed by surrounding powers like Babylonians, Persians, and later Nabateans. Interesting. Which I don't like to take the first go at ChatGPT as any kind of good information, but yeah, so that's interesting. They just basically just decided, the women on their own, they always have bright ideas, that they're gonna screw their father, get him drunk, and I mean, this is a theme in the book too, constantly with women. From Sarah, from these girls now, from Rebecca, if I recall her name correctly.
From
They're
Eve,
just
Eve on.
horrendous. Huh?
From Eve on, coming up with ideas or doing things that you're not supposed to do. Yeah, not just the men are terrible, the women can be terrible as well, clearly. And this
Well,
is
far
so,
more usually.
yeah. This is what happens when you raise your children around wicked people, right? I mean, Lot he was considered righteous just because he wasn't raping strangers and he fed them. But his
Well, his
daughters,
daughters raped him.
yeah, his own daughters raped him, um, to have incestuous children. And
I
we all
mean,
know, if you have kids, who you surround yourself with, right? Your circle has is the strongest or the biggest impactor on the future of your life and who you become, like the people you surround yourself with. And so, if you're going to raise your family around a bunch of wicked people, your children are going to they're going to pick up at least some of that, if not a lot of it. And this is showing that. This is why God told Abraham and Lot, you need to be sojourners, not live amongst all of these wicked people. And Lot, he didn't want to do that. He wanted to live in the comfort of the city, and the consequences, of that is his daughters were raised up in an environment where they thought it was perfectly okay to get their father drunk and get pregnant from him.
yeah, I also like their very easy access to wine at all times, even if they're in a cave. I guess they're nearby a city, but still, that's just like they have better access than I do here in the middle of the country.
It must have
But
brought some with them, I
in
guess. I don't
21st
know.
century.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it's an interesting choice to write it this way, right? Because it makes it very clear that what they're doing is secretive and almost you can assert. I don't like usually asserting things or inserting. I'm sorry, inserting things, but almost suggest that maybe Lot wouldn't be with it, right? Otherwise, they could have just come to their father and be like, "Yo, do you want to
Right.
bang so we can continue this race or this lineage," right? But that's not what they did. They got him drunk secretively and you know
Yeah. Otherwise, it would have been more like a porno, I guess, of some sort. But yeah, they had to get him drunk because they didn't think that he would agree to it, which he probably wouldn't have, you know. Um, and yeah, well, we see a lot in the genealogy in the Old Testament how the saying the apple doesn't fall far from the
for
tree,
yep.
right? And so, but you do see, right? What you end up seeing though is slight improvements in each generation. So as the story goes on, at least to a certain point, especially here in Genesis, where we end with Joseph, we see each generation getting slightly better and better and closer to God. Um, and so there's an improvement here. So you can see that when you walk with God and you raise your children in a righteous way, they can actually be better than you, right? Which is exactly what every parent wants for their kid is for them to be better and live a better, happier, more fulfilled life than they had. But if you raise them amongst a bunch of wicked people, you're compromising the ability for your children
To
to see
set
that,
back.
and that's what this shows. Right?
Yep. Yeah, very interesting chapter for sure. It's disturbing, insane chapter. So we basically went through. It's a
You
loaded
thought we were done
chapter,
with the
19.
incest stuff a few chapters ago, but nope,
No, no.
we had
This
more.
is this is worse. Well, the other one I 100% disagree that has anything to do with incest, but this one, that's now that unavoidable clear language, if it can get more clear.
Hmm.
So we basically go from an insane level of obnoxious behavior of just people literally knocking on doors saying, "We just saw new people. Can we please,
Hmm.
do something to them?" And then they're blinded, and they still just that doesn't matter. They're just basically they're possessed, right? They're
They're animal. Yeah, no,
possessed.
that's the perfect word. They're possessed. They're possessed by the spirit of Sodom and Gomorrah, the gods that they worship, and they're controlled by this. You know.
Yeah. And then this reminds me of Idiocracy, right? The movie where the guy, anybody who hasn't seen, they take two of the dumbest people on the planet and they just decide to run some experiments on them. They freeze them, supposedly for, I don't know, it's supposed to be many more years, but then 500 years later, the whole thing breaks and you know, they all of a sudden are now walking in the future 500 years later, where now these dumbest people on the planet are the smartest people on the planet,
Right.
right? So most people who probably have seen the movie are like, okay, cut to the chase. So basically they're so wicked that now this guy who just shows zero markers of any righteousness, really, all they just did is just like, yeah, no, come, you can sleep on my couch, here's some food. And
Here's some food. Yeah.
exactly, and that's enough. I mean, I guess that's even would be enough today. But yeah, that's enough to just set the bar that now you deserve to be saved. But then your children are wicked because they just turn around and rape you in your sleep after getting you drunk. That's just what a fantastic story.
Right. What a fantastic way to end that chapter. I actually think you brought up a perfect point to end on here, which I was going to bring up as well. Um, it is a low bar, but of righteousness. But thank God it is such a low bar that God actually is willing to look at us, horrible people as we are. I haven't murdered or cannibalized or raped anyone, but I'm still a terrible person. I've done plenty of horrible things. My point being, though, we've all done terrible things. If God sets such a high bar for Him to be able to say, "I'm willing to save you," like we would be all out of luck. Only the most holy people who are raised by holy people would be
Yeah,
able to be saved. But thankfully, I mean, what the story is showing is this, you know, it's not a high bar. Just a little bit of righteousness, like a little bit of yeast will make bread rise, right? A little bit of
yeah,
righteousness. Even 10 people in the town, righteous people, would have saved the entire city, right?
yeah.
And just a little bit of righteousness, God will say, okay, I will save you. And and it's a great thing that God is willing to do that.
Yeah, no, that's true. That's a very good point, actually. That's a extremely good point because you're right. I mean, yeah, if the bar was higher, the bar is just basically as low as like don't murder, don't rape,
Don't eat people. Don't
don't eat people.
I mean, that's about it, right? At this point,
Assassin,
it's just
yeah,
like don't rape, don't murder and rape.
yeah,
Just
yeah.
don't do that and God will save you.
That's yeah, that should be easy.
It
All
should be.
right. well, well, this was a fun one. I think this was a good read. You guys, if you made it this far, subscribe. We would love that a lot. Your support means a lot. I'll see you next time. We will see you next time. I'm so used to saying I'll see you next time on the other show.
Oh yeah. Well, don't worry, there won't be any more incest for quite a while.
for some time. Okay, we'll see about that.